What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know how to use a timer app correctly and how long it should be set for to keep your creative powers at peak force? Well, I have good news for you. I put together a special report showing you how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener of the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time.
You're listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
What's up, everybody? It's Kyle from Unlocking Your Inner Strength and Unlocking Your Inner Strength, as well as Newell Strength, once again. And for today's show, I wanted to go over MindMap principles. I realize that not everybody has listened to every show. We have new listeners. We have people that don't have that foundational knowledge of the brain and how it works. And it's really fascinating. I base a lot of my teachings and my philosophy in MindMap. So what is MindMap? We're going to get into that. Let me tell you the story of when I first became exposed to mind mapping. This guy, Dax Moy, eccentric character from the UK. I dig the stuff he puts out. Former British Special Forces in the fitness world. So when I saw he was coming to the New Jersey area in 2014 to teach a 2-day workshop, I said, okay, I'm going to sign up for this and see what this is all about. So I went that first Saturday with my buddy CJ, and when we went to lunch that day, me and CJ kind of looked at each other and said, I don't know about this. I don't know. How are you going to implement this? How are you going to use it with people? Well, by the end of the second day, which was a Sunday, I was hooked. That thing pulled me in, and I realized the power of it, of knowing how your brain functions and how it either reacts or responds to certain situations. And now it's the core of my coaching philosophy and how I try to help people. So what is mind map? Mind mapping is basically the science of transformation. When I talk about transformation, it's rooted in habits. Everything we do in life, anything we're trying to achieve or succeed at, is about our habits, our daily habits. And you have habits, whether they're good or bad. The brain thrives on habits because the brain is built around survival. That's a perfect segue into the triune brain theory. So Paul MacLean was a doctor that came up with this triune brain theory, and basically it states that we have 3 levels of the brain. You have the reptile brain, you have the mammal brain, and you have the human brain. And that's the way it evolved, each layer one on top of the other. So what does each layer of the brain do or represent? Well, the reptile brain is at your brain stem. It's the oldest part of the brain. The reptile brain is essentially to ensure our physical survival. It is hell-bent on survival. Actually, everything the brain does is because of survival, and that's why habits are important. Frees up the brain to scan the environment and worry and predict new patterns rather than having to think of every old routine thing that we have to do during a day. Anyhow, the reptile brain, to me, represents danger, food, and sex. Danger, food, and sex. Now, that part of your brain is where the amygdala is located, which is always scanning the environment. So we're going to talk about environments in a little bit, but it's like sonar. Beep, beep, beep. Always scanning the environment, trying to pick up on threats. Now, we need to make sure that that part of the brain is safe to move forward. If that part of the brain is not having its needs met, first of all, the human race would fail to continue on if this was on a global scale. But on an individual scale, you can't really get into your mammal brain if you're worried about where your next meal is going to come from, if you're starving yourself, if you're not having outlets for sexual reproduction, things of that nature. Or if there's a threat to your physical life. The mammal part of the brain is for survival. Excuse me, not survival. It is for connection. Connection, emotion, experience, attachment. There is a structure in the mammal part of the brain known as the anterior cingulate cortex. What's important about that or interesting about that is both men and women have that part of the brain. In women, it's more pronounced and larger. And it's more pronounced and larger because estrogen enhances that part of your brain. So why do you think that would be larger in females? Well, it's because the female's role, if we look at evolution, was to nurture the family, provide love to the family, create bonding and attachment so each family member had a better chance to survive, and to really care for the offspring. Now, in men, that part of your brain is smaller. Testosterone will actually shrink that part of your brain. And I always semi-tease Devin, but I'm not teasing, with Colt, or when we had Braxton, there's research out there showing that when a man is near a crying baby or holds a crying baby, it lowers his testosterone levels. Probably because that part of your brain is activated more, and that can produce, my theory anyway, more estrogen, lower your testosterone. So I always say, look, Devin, this isn't my, it doesn't fit with my hormones. I shouldn't be having a whole colt while he's crying in the middle of the night. And I'm kind of joking with that, but there's science behind it. And then we have the human part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. Now, this part of your brain is where we have forward thought, logical thought, linear thought. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you ever pull up that pyramid, Abraham Maslow, it fits perfectly with the triune brain theory, meaning the lower levels are the foundational stuff, but the physical safety, okay? Having your physical needs met. Then it moves up to esteem and belonging, so more of your mammal brain. And then the top one is self-actualization, which is achievement and reaching your highest self and achieving your full potential, which is a human part of the brain. The human wants to strive for that. We're the only species that can strive for that. If the animal parts of the brain are not happy, quote unquote, you can't move forward. You can't create a lasting transformation. Now, the difference between a transformation and change is temporary. So if we think about this in terms of diet or weight loss, so many people out there have achieved a temporary weight loss. So I always ask people when I do workshops, raise your hand if your diet worked for you. Sometimes hands will go up and I'll say, okay, how much did you lose? Well, I lost 20 when I did it. So how much are you down now? Are you still down? I'm up 30 from that point. Well, it didn't work then because that was a temporary change. Transformation is when it's permanent. And that's about, again, habit formation. But to form habit, you need to realize that the thing is not the thing. And again, I'll use nutrition because a lot of people understand the need for proper nutrition. You knowing what to eat and what is healthy typically is not an information problem. If it were just pure information, you'd be able to Google that information and implement it. So that's not the issue as to why we binge eat or stress eat, things of that nature. But it goes deeper. What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know how to use a timer app correctly and how long it should be set for to keep your creative powers at peak force? Well, I have good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener of the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time. We need to identify where's the main source of stress or threat in our life. So when I do a mind map session, I usually start out with finding what the person is really after, and I go pretty deep with that, what they really want to achieve, using my 5, 6, 7 technique that was taught to me. And then I'll ask them, what has been the main source of, top of mind emotion for the past month, 2 months or whatnot. A lot of times it's overwhelmed, they're frustrated, they're anxious, they're scared. And then I kind of dig deeper. What's the main source of that? Now, the reason this is important, and I'm going to talk more about next week with hormones in the mind mapping, is because your stress response will largely regulate your hormones. And your hormones dictate your metabolism and your body composition and a lot of pretty much everything else in your body, how your brain functions. So you have two parts of the nervous system that we are concerned with. You have the parasympathetic nervous system and you have the sympathetic nervous system. Those are both parts of what's known as the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, in order to give you the best chance for survival, is freeze, flight, or fight. Freeze, flight, or fight. Now, why that order? Well, let's say I was being chased by a bear. Now, what would happen a lot of the times is I would just pass out without any conscious thought. That's freeze mode and ensures or enhances my chance for survival. Now, why would that happen? Well, the brain is brilliant. The brain knows that a predator is not going to eat something that it thinks another predator killed. Scavengers do that. Predators don't. Or if I didn't pass out, what do they tell you? Play dead. Same idea. In everyday life, many times, our physical survival is not on the line. So we're not going to play dead or pass out. What happens is we still enter a freeze mode. Now, this is kind of like a mild depression. You can't flight or you can't flee your situation many times in life if you have responsibilities, family and career and whatnot. And you can't fight that situation. You can, but most people choose not to. So what happens is you go into freeze mode. Now, freeze mode, you'll know you're in it. And everybody has bouts of this. You'll know you're in it because it's going to be harder to wake up in the morning. It's going to be harder to motivate yourself to do anything of significance. And it could be a very slippery slope because that momentum starts building in a negative trend. So that's freeze mode. Now, flight, if somebody comes up to me at a bar and I know they could kick my ass, I'd be wise to say, okay, you want to fight? No, thank you. I'm just going to leave. That's probably the better option because it enhances my chance for survival. If you watch any of these wild animal kingdom shows, right? You'll see the zebras and whatnot flee. They'll go into flight response from the predators. Now, here's what's interesting. While they're fleeing, while they're running away, things like cortisol and adrenaline are racing through their veins. Those are alertness hormones, and those are to activate our muscular system more so. And either one of two things happens. They get caught and they get eaten, or they escape and then they return to their parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, digest, recover, eat, okay? Eat and sleep, those types of things. As humans, what's happened is we become so turned on with the switch of the sympathetic nervous system that we're constantly stressed. If you're constantly stressed and your hormones, again, I'm going to touch more on next week, are out of control, certain hormones, it doesn't matter what you do with your diet to a large degree, you're not going to be able to knock the body fat off. And yes, it is very much how I always say, it's the hormones. It's not calories in, calories out. And as an aside, I was just reading about a study that one of my friends posted where it said they took this group of people and the only change they made with them was that they gave them 1 hour less of sleep per night than they normally got. Well, over the course of that year, the average weight gain in the group, and it was a pretty significant group, was 14 pounds of fat. So think about that for a second. It's the only thing they changed was how much sleep they were getting. The point being, guys and girls, is that we need to have some kind of system or response to get back into a parasympathetic state so we can digest properly and sleep properly and things of that nature. Last thing I want to touch on this week with the MindMap principles is kind of going back to that mammal part of your brain. A lot of issues take place there. Usually, not always, the reptile brain is okay. Usually that's not what I'm dealing with when I do mind map sessions. But the mammal brain, where relationships take place of all types and where our environment with other people largely comes into play, usually that's where we can affect some improvement. So judgment to the brain is very, very threatening because the way the brain perceives this, and this is going to make sense and kind of hit you right between the eyes if you ever have to give a public speech. The way the brain perceives judgment is that if you judge me, and we evolved in tribes and packs of people, and you kick me to the outside of the tribe where you judge me so much that you really don't like me, you kick me out of the tribe, what happens to my chance for survival? It goes way down. So the brain perceives it as that. Now, when you're giving a public speech, that's the number 1 or 2 fear of people. I think the first is death. And I think at one point it was actually ahead of death, if you can believe that. Once I explain that to people, that this fear they have when they're giving their speech is not a life or death situation. I don't know of anybody that's ever died giving a speech. I'm sure somebody's might have had a heart attack before, but it was because of the internal pressure they would probably put on themselves or just bad timing. But that judgment, when you get up there to talk in front of people, the brain says, man, all these people are going to have the chance to judge what I'm saying and to deem it worthy or not worthy. And that's very alarming to the brain. And another way that you have to be aware with judgment is, and this is a basic mind map principle, I'll tie it into judgment and comparison. You have to be given permission to coach somebody, and you have to give permission to be coached. Now, what I mean by this, think of any relationship in your life, and at times you just started giving that person advice unwarranted. Don't do that, because their brain is going to reject it because it comes across as judgment. Judgment because basically, hey, Kyle, you should do this. The brain perceives that as you should do this because what you're doing isn't the right way to do it. And that's comparison as well. They're comparing their way to your way, but it's going to put you into a stress response. So think about the times that's been done to you or the times you've done it and just start catching yourself. Okay. And we could go a lot of ways with judgment and stress response and judgment in terms of self-judgment and body composition. But know that it's a present factor that we have to deal with. Now, the second thing is environments. Remember that brain is always scanning your environments. There's 6 different types of environments. The ones that I'm usually focused on are the home environment and the work environment. The most stressful time of the day for the human body is when we go from sleeping to waking. We're going unconscious environment to conscious environment. That's why cortisol spikes right when we wake up, or that's actually what wakes us up. Cortisol is an alertness hormone. Again, put yourself out in the jungle thousands of years ago, or the wilderness, and you wake up, you don't know where the predators are at, who's coming at you, is your family okay? It's a very, very stressful time of day. Now, anytime we change environments, it's stressful. But you have to assess the environments you spend the most time on. Do an audit, we call it, so you can go through the actual physical room. What don't you like in there? What's kind of making you stressed out? Is there too much clutter? Go through the environment as far as, are you constantly around people that don't like you or you don't like? So if that happens, you have to somehow figure out how to remove yourself from that situation, or at least deal with it your very best, because that's putting you at a stress response. So we got the 3 parts of the brain: reptile, mammal, human. And with the human, we will talk about willpower next week as well. You have the stress response and how judgment and environment play into all of this. So that's it for this episode. If you get a chance, please leave a review on iTunes. It helps me out a lot. If you want to see me talk about something in the show, definitely email me at kyle@newellstrength.com. Share this with a friend if you think it can help them. And lastly, the application for the fall mastermind is open. Go to unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/mastermind. Taking 5 people. It's a 90-day mastermind. I find that works best. And whatever the 90-day outcome we set out to achieve is for you personally, you will achieve it. I guarantee you that. If you follow what I'm going to teach you in this 90-day mastermind. But there's an investment, so you can check that out at that site. Again, thanks for listening. Be back next week with some more Mind Map. Until then, enjoy the week.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.